I blame my dad for so many things in my life because my dad used to beat my mum when he drank when I was a kid. And I held on to that stuff. And I never realised until that point of being put down with my mum and dad on tag that my dad was 30 years sober. I never ever gave him that credit because I was too busy blaming him for me because it was easier to blame him for the things that he said and did 30 years prior than to actually blame myself, and it was probably one of the most amazing situations because out of all that darkness at that point in time, what I was going through, I got to know my father. And then I obviously won the court case because I was vindicated of all charges. And it was proven in court that it never happened. And, my dad saw that happen and then a month later passed away in front of me, which I'm so grateful for, the fact that I got to know him in that respect, even through that dark time. Something really magical happened through that.
Tony, first of all, it's worth saying that you look really well.
Thank you.
And I say that because I've read the book and you make it very clear that hasn't always been the case.
No, at the end of my youthing, I weighed 7 stone. I had 1 tooth left in my head. My whole face had caved in through the drugs that I'd been taking at that point in time, kind of just changed my whole bone structure in my face. It was just really bizarre. But today, that's not the case because today I look after myself. I drink water and I do everything in the bed to absolute perfection when it comes to looking after myself because it's really important.
It is. But when it came to writing this book, did you decide to be as brutally honest as possible? Because I'll be honest with you, there were bits of this I was quite shocked by.
I think if you're going to write a book and you've never written a book before, you want to make the best book you can. And it took 2.5 years because there were a lot of stops and changes because I would do it with Mikey. I'd dictate, here to go away, and he'd come back the next day.
He's your ghostwriter.
Yeah. No, he wasn't a ghostwriter. We wrote it together.
Okay.
So he would come back and he would have put words in like jolly, which is not a word I use. And then he would change it. But, it wasn't truthful enough. I just thought, hang on, why have I sugarcoated that? And there were elements of it, different chapters that I've really struggled with, the abuse chapter and stuff like that. Whilst writing that stuff, I kind of got really ill. Like the first day that we started the abuse chapter, I thought I had food poisoning, and it turns out it was post trauma. It was the trauma of what I thought I'd dealt with early on as a teenager. I'd never dealt with it, and suddenly to bring that stuff up made me really, really ill. So I had to go away and do extreme trauma therapy around those chapters. Which was amazing in itself because it kind of got me to a point where I can talk about that stuff very free and easily because I've dealt with it now. But yeah, I think telling the truth when you've lied all your life, which I had done up to that point, was the most cathartic thing I could have done. And, if you'd said to me 40 years ago, the minute you start telling the truth is the minute you'll find freedom, I would have laughed in your face. But it's true.
Yeah, I mean, there are some interesting celebrity endorsements of the book, and I love the one from Elton John and David Furnish, who describe you as a tosser but say they still love you.
It kind of sums it up, really.
Well, you say yourself, your behaviour, and we will talk about some of the terrible things that happened to you as a kid, but your behaviour was pretty awful, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And you say that yourself.
But you know what? Today I would have been diagnosed with ADHD and I would have been diagnosed with dyslexia and all of those things. And as a kid, I wasn't. I was diagnosed as a problematic child. And I never got the help that I needed, and I wasn't given direction. So I was unruly. So I was sent to places where unruly kids went. And there was no care or love in those places, especially within the schooling system. So, I was left to my own devices. And, we come from a time where we didn't have social media. We didn't have that platform to project ourselves we had to create our own platform. And where I was abused as a child at 10 years of age for 4 years, that I laugh about it because it's not laughing at the abuse. I'm laughing at the fact that it went on for 4 years. For me, that kind of changed the way I saw people and the way I was treated. I didn't know any better. I didn't know how to treat. So I didn't want anyone ever to get close to me. I always wanted people to like me. I never ever wanted anyone to love me because I was scared of love. I was scared of intimacy because the only intimacy I'd ever known to that point was sexual intimacy, and it was forced upon me. So it changed the direction of my life.
Can you tell us just a little bit about that abuse, just how you ended up in a position where this had happened to you?
So, I at the time, it was the summer holidays, and there was a place in Battersea called Battersea Arts Centre on Lavender Hill, and there was a summer club, and I started going there. My mum and dad sent me there weekdays, and I met some guy that was showing films in youth clubs, and he offered me a job very quickly, offered me a job, started to groom me. And within a couple of months, the abuse started. But he kind of, it was, very, I was always out. There was never a point of me where I had to think about my sexuality. I kind of just knew who I was. And I was very, very outward about that stuff. So I was easy prey in that sense. Also, there was a lot of stuff going on at home. And the abuse went on for 4 years. 4 years, I was made to feel that it was me doing it. It was my instigation. I was made to, because I was working for him, money was changing hands. It all become really, really dark and really awful very quickly.
And to my complete amazement, although I was, I'm around the same age as you, I grew up at that time, this guy took you abroad.
Yeah.
And in fairness, a number of adults did try to intervene on your behalf.
Yeah.
But this was happening in plain sight. Do you believe that could happen now?
I really don't believe it could happen now. I think that we're more clued up around that stuff, and I think that the word paedophile is such a part of our vocabulary today and the understanding of that word. Back then, it really wasn't the case. I think it was much more of an ushered word. I think it was what went on behind closed doors. People weren't really clued up around it. My mum and dad was certainly not clued up about the fact that someone was grooming me or any of that stuff, because my mum had her own issues at the time. She had cancer, and my dad couldn't cope with the fact that my mum had cancer, so he was drinking. So, when my mum did actually at some point ask me, has he ever tried to touch you or anything like that, for some unknown reason, because my little brother had said something. And I was like, no, because I was made to feel that if I had said that, then I would be the one that got in trouble, because I was accepting money.
But do you think it was also a bit of homophobia, because there was a fear of not understanding a gay relationship, but also that trope of the older man and the younger
100%,
man
yeah.
is there, and that's still with us today, isn't it?
That's so much is with us today. But we especially within my community, the whole daddy thing is a really big issue. People anyone who's of a certain age and they go with younger people are like daddies, and it's kind of like generalized. But when it comes to the word paedophilia and paedophile, they're not gay men. Let's get that straight. It's a whole different ballgame. Gay men aren't, obviously you can get gay men that are paedophiles, but paedophiles in general are not gay men. They're a whole different sexuality in themselves. And I think that's what needs to be more understood. It's an illness, like anything. To say it's an illness is easy for me to say because I was abused. But, when you look at it on a grander scale, these people, they don't have a choice. It's not like something, they woke up today. Like, I'm gay, right? I know my sexuality. A paedophile is exactly the same kind of thing. They know that they're a paedophile.
What is really shocking and really, I know, upset you desperately was that you were falsely accused of abusing a boy, a teenager.
Yeah.
And that is the point in the book, I think, at which you're lowest, aren't you? Because that was just really tough.
My life at that point, I was 2 years clean, and I was out walking my dog, and this situation happened where they'd laid grass down outside the Angel shopping centre. This kid had thrown a piece of turf at my pregnant dog that I was just coming back from the vets with, that I was just getting her tested. And I very stupidly smacked him around the head because, it was my dog. And that was it. And then suddenly, 3 days later, I was jumped on by 9 police and taken to a police station. And I was questioned without a lawyer because I didn't think that I needed a lawyer. I thought, hang on, they're going to let me go in a minute. They've got the wrong person. I was quite happy to talk to the police, thinking, okay. But in that interview, I said that I'd been abused as a child. I just got into recovery. I was 2 years clean, and part of my program is to be honest. So I told them everything. Told them everything they needed to hear, in the sense that I was a gay man, I'd cruised in the past, and they're 2 and 2 made 26 very quickly for them. And I had a year of persecution. I had a year where I wasn't allowed to go to my own house. I had a year where I was on bail. I went to prison. I went to Pentonville prison for, it seemed like an eternity, but it was like a matter of like 6 weeks of being in Pentonville prison for something that I'd never done. And at that point in time, I was still sober and I never once reached for a drink or a cigarette or anything else.
You went back home to live with your mum and dad, didn't you?
Yeah, I went down to Dungeness, bowed to my mum and dad's house. And living down there, I blame my dad for so many things in my life because my dad used to beat my mum when he drank when I was a kid. And I held on to that stuff. And I never realised until that point of being put down with my mum and dad on tag that my dad was 30 years sober. I never ever gave him that credit because I was too busy blaming him for me because it was easier to blame him for the things that he said and did 30 years prior than to actually blame myself, and it was probably one of the most amazing situations because out of all that darkness at that point in time, what I was going through, I got to know my father. And then I obviously won the court case because I was vindicated of all charges. And it was proven in court that it never happened. And, my dad saw that happen and then a month later passed away in front of me, which I'm so grateful for, the fact that I got to know him in that respect, even through that dark time. Something really magical happened through that.
I wonder whether perhaps we're in danger of letting people think that you haven't had a great time over the years.
Oh, my
Tony,
God,
because,
yeah, totally.
You've not only had a great time, you've made a great time for lots of other people. Have you ever seen him DJ?
No, but I really,
my
really,
God.
really wish that I
Yes, so do
had.
I.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would love to. And actually, I was wondering, so many addicts talk about how their environment very much affects them, and part of their huge strength sometimes can be walking away from an environment that they connect with whatever their addiction is. So I wonder how you now feel about tunes and about music.
For me, when I was in rehab, and the very last day, they said to me, "You can't go back to London. You can't go back to DJing. You can't go back to that relationship." And at that point in time, I said, "I'm not going backwards to anything. I'm going forwards to London. I'm going forwards to my career." And it's been that way since. For me today, music is the best drug you'll ever take in your life. It has the ability to transport you to places that memories that you have. 3 bars of a tune can make your hair stand on end. No drug can do that, right? And for me, I had that connection with music again. I have that connection with people.
But we were talking about you yesterday, Tony, behind your back, and both marvelling at how you could hold it together and do these great nights and put together, track after great track after great track when you're absolutely out of it. On some sort of bender that on occasion could go on for 4 or 5 days, not sleeping. Quite simply, do you remember how you did it?
Because I had to do it. That was the way I got money. That was what I did.
But you weren't paying tax or anything, were you?
Oh, no, I didn't pay tax till I was 51. And now I'm paying probably more tax than the whole government put together, which is fine. And I don't moan about it. Do you get what I mean? Because it's like, hang on. But
I'm sorry, but that was such a fantastic BBC question.
It really was, wasn't it? But you didn't pay tax. But you know what the thing is?
Get very cross about that kind of
I was
thing.
the first person to hold my hand up to it. Because, it was a case of, I remember my dog getting ill and everyone was like, "Have you not got pet insurance?" I was like, "I'm a junkie. How have I got pet insurance? Get real." Paying the tax, who's the tax man? I was a junkie for 28 years. I was homeless. Homeless people don't pay tax. Do you get what I'm saying to you? It was
you owed rent, I think, unfortunately.
On Paul
you owed to
Raymond.
Paul Raymond, the king of Soho. Yeah.
Yeah, for many years, they bankrupted me at one point, which is fine. These are circumstances of my using, circumstances of situation. Today, as I say, I don't have any skeletons in my closet. I do what's right by me and by what everyone else around me, because I have a duty of care, not only for myself but for many other addicts. I work with people in addiction. I work with all different types of people because I'm firm believer what you put out, you get back. And for me not to pay my tax today would be just extremely
I'm
wrong.
glad we've cleared that up.
But it's true.
No, I know, I get it completely.
This year I went to see my tax man, my accountant. And, my threshold had gone so high. And I was like, oh, my God, how am I going to pay this? And, of course, my instinct reaction was, I'm not paying this. I'm going to leave the country. I'm going to go and live somewhere else. And it was the day before I was 16 years clean. In January, I'm on the 9th of January, I was 16 years on the 10th of January. And I remember sitting in the accountants and she was like, well, look, the bad news is blah, blah, blah. And they told me the amount of money. And I was like, that's like a house. And they were like, well, you've obviously earned that money. And I said, I don't want you to tell me that I've earned that money in order to pay that tax. But, the thing was, my immediate reaction was, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And I sat there and thought, you're 16 years clean tomorrow and sober. Of course you're doing it. And I was like, of course, I'll pay it. I'll pay it straight away.
Can you just name drop for us? Just take us a little bit into your glamorous life. What was the best night? What was when you look round a room and think, wow, there's what, and there's them, and then they're here as well? You must have been starstruck by it all.
You know what? I think I'm more starstruck since I've been sober by it, because those, there's been moments where I had these pinch me moments and I just think, how the hell did I get here? From being homeless on the street with no teeth to suddenly being in Donatella Versace's living room, or being on a boat with Leonardo DiCaprio. Those kind of moments are like real, like, wow moments. And then what I do is I reel it back in, because I for me, it's a part of my job and what I do. And they're levels of where they're not success levels. They're levels of career levels. Success, as I say today, for me is not about being on a boat with Leonardo DiCaprio or being in papers or magazines for the right reasons. What it is about being at home with my dog on the sofa and being in the moment. That's true success to me today. And everything else career-wise, when anyone says, what was your best party or what was the best night you ever had, I always say it's never happened yet. Because things always get better.
With all of your knowledge of addiction, do you think you can stop an addict before they even start?
I think that education is a very big part of what we are, and understanding. Tolerance shouldn't be a part of it. It's about acceptance of where that person is, and you accept them for who they are and where they're at, and you let them know that you're there to support them. When we start to point fingers, it all gets very underground and very dark. And I just think that you can't stop. If someone who's in active addiction, if you feel that, we're gonna organise an intervention, please don't. Because what you're doing is you're just making that person hide and be more shameful around what they do. Shame is a really big factor when we're in addiction. We don't need it added to us by other people, especially members of our loved ones. We want them to accept us in the sense that, okay, I'm here for you. The minute that you think that they need help, that's when you go in and you say, listen, let me take you somewhere. Let me show you. Let me show you. You need to go because you need doesn't work. Let us. That's the secret to this.
You did try to help George Michael, didn't you?
Oh, on so many occasions. I love Jog, and there were moments where I got through. There were moments where I got through. But you know what? It's circumstantial again. You can get through to someone on a Monday, but Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, they're gone again because their other friends come in and get involved. The thing about addicts is they take prisoners and before you know it, you can't remove someone. It's the only minute you can make someone stop is when they want to stop. Those God-given moments.
Can you just give us your ultimate floor fillers, please?
It depends on where I am and what I'm doing. Because I read energy. That's my job. I don't set out to make a playlist for a club before I go out. It's all on sticks. I will get there and I'll read the energy of that dance floor and I relay that energy back.
Well, let me set a scenario for you then. Let's say it's Lady Jane Garvey's 60th birthday.
It's unthinkable, isn't it?
And she's out in a club, Tony. She's got all her mates around her.
What would I like?
She likes a big floor-filling banger.
Oh, well, okay. We're going with Freed from Desire, and then we'll take it from there. We'll do Pump Up the Jam and all of those party tunes.
Come on, Eileen.
Listen, of course. Well, I wouldn't go that far, but but you know what I'm saying. If it's a party, it needs to be a party.
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse than someone thinking they're too cool for school to play party music. We do a brunch on Sundays. We don't use the word brunch anymore. On Saturdays, called Full Fat, and it's primarily 300 women every Saturday. We do it in seasons because it's so exhausting for me. But it's from midday till 5 p.m. and it's all women enjoying the moment, regardless of age, sexuality, race,
Well, which
size.
tracks go down well there?
Oh, so there it's all about old house tracks and all the classics. Do you know what I mean? We play everything from Robin S. Show Me Love right the way through. There's lots of George Michael played.
Right.
Always.
Oh, that sounds like
Fast
heaven.
Love is the good one, isn't
I've
it?
got it tattooed on my hands.
Oh, you have? Absolutely.
Yeah,
I
Fast Love.
couldn't help but notice one of your other tattoos says hypocrite.
Yeah, I have arrogant and hypocrite on my hands because this is the hand I always say to people, don't do this, don't do that, and I'm doing it myself. And this is the hand that I tell people to F off with.
Oh, that's nice. Well, I think that's an appropriate way to end the interview.
Which one are we going to get?
You'll get neither today, actually. You're going to get the loving hand, the helping hand.
Tony, thank you.